You hear a guttural roar, the shriek of tearing metal, and then a blinding flash of steel. Your shield splinters, your arm goes numb, and you're thrown backward into the mud, the world spinning. Before you even register the pain, a shadow falls over you, and the last thing you see is a brutal, unforgiving weapon arcing down. You wouldn't survive a round against it. Today, we delve into the medieval arsenal, not for the faint of heart. We're not talking about the glorified swords of legend, but the true instruments of terror. The weapons engineered for one purpose: to inflict maximum, agonizing devastation. These are the tools that separated the living from the dead. The instruments of raw, brutal power that you, armed with only modern assumptions, would not survive a round against. The two-handed sword. Not for show, but for slaughter. Forget the elegant duels of Hollywood. The true two-handed sword, often known as the great sword or zweihänder, was not a fencing tool. It was a massive, brutal implement designed to cleave through men, armor, and formations with terrifying force. Imagine a blade 6 feet long, sometimes even more, weighing upwards of 8 pounds, requiring immense strength and training to wield effectively. This wasn't about finesse. It was about overwhelming, destructive power. A knight, or a specialized landsknecht, wielding one of these monstrous weapons could shatter shields, snap spear shafts, and even crack open lesser armors. The sheer reach kept opponents at bay, forcing them to confront a terrifying wall of swinging steel. A single, well-placed blow from a greatsword could dismember a limb, split a helmet, or simply flatten a man under its crushing impact. You wouldn't survive a single, sweeping arc. Its wielder was a human whirlwind of death, and its primary purpose was not to wound, but to utterly obliterate. Its terrifying effectiveness lay in its ability to ignore the intricacies of individual combat and simply bludgeon its way through any opposition. Against such a weapon, your quickness and agility would be meaningless. The overwhelming force would simply sweep you aside. The poleaxe, the armor's grim reaper. When knights encased themselves in near impenetrable plate armor, a new breed of weapon emerged to counter it. The poleaxe was not a simple axe on a stick. It was a highly specialized, multifunctional tool of destruction, often featuring a sharpened axe blade, a hammerhead, and a wicked spike at the top. Each component had a distinct, brutal purpose. The axe blade could hack at unarmored limbs or cleave through chainmail. The hammerhead, blunt and heavy, was designed to deliver concussive force that would dent, deform, and crush plate armor, transmitting devastating shockwaves directly to the unarmored body beneath. Even if the plate held, the sheer impact could break bones, rupture organs, or cause severe internal bleeding. And then there was the spike, a narrow, hardened point designed to penetrate the gaps in armor. Armpits, elbows, neck joints, delivering a fatal thrust into vital organs or arteries. A master of the poleaxe was a terrifying sight. They didn't just swing, they probed, hooked, and hammered, exploiting every weakness in a knight's defense. A round against a poleaxe wouldn't be a fight. It would be a systematic deconstruction, each strike a calculated blow against your very survival. The brutal efficiency of this weapon against the most heavily armored foes made it one of the most feared and respected tools on the late medieval battlefield. It was specifically designed to defeat the pinnacle of defensive technology, making its wielder a specialist in human obliteration. The trebuchet, the architect of annihilation. Now, let's step beyond personal combat to the true titans of medieval warfare. The trebuchet wasn't a weapon wielded by a man, but by an entire siege crew. It was a monstrous, counterweight-powered artillery piece capable of launching immense projectiles, massive stones, flaming missiles, even diseased carcasses, with devastating force and accuracy over vast distances. Imagine the thunderous crash as a 200-pound stone projectile, launched with unimaginable power, slams into a stone wall, shattering it like glass. Or picture a rain of flaming pitch igniting entire sections of a besieged city. The psychological impact alone was crippling. The very ground would tremble with each launch, and the sight of a massive boulder arcing through the sky towards your position would fill even the bravest defenders with dread. You wouldn't survive a round against a trebuchet because you wouldn't even see the round coming until it was too late. One moment, you're on a wall, defending your position. The next, you're crushed beneath tons of falling masonry or consumed by a sudden, fiery inferno. The trebuchet didn't just break walls, it broke spirits. It was the ultimate statement of overwhelming force, turning entire landscapes into death traps and rendering even the strongest fortifications utterly vulnerable. Its power was indiscriminate, brutal, and absolute. The war scythe, the peasant's fury unleashed. Often overlooked in the shadow of more noble weapons, the war scythe was a terrifyingly effective, brutally simple instrument of death, born from the desperation and ingenuity of peasant levies. This was not the farming tool. It was a sharpened, elongated scythe blade, reinforced and mounted vertically on a long pole, sometimes with additional spikes or hooks. Its primary purpose was to counter cavalry. Imagine a charging horse, its hooves churning the earth, its rider a blur of steel. The war scythe, wielded by a line of determined peasants, could hamstring a horse, disembowel a man, or simply lop off a limb with a single, sweeping motion. The long reach and devastating cutting power, especially against unarmored or lightly armored targets, made it a truly horrifying weapon. It was crude, yes, but its effectiveness lay in its simplicity and the sheer raw power it could bring to bear. You wouldn't survive a round against a war scythe because it was designed for merciless wide arcs of destruction. In a massed formation, a line of war scythes could carve through infantry like grain, and against a mounted opponent, it became a lethal, unpredictable saw. Its brutal, tearing wounds were often immediately incapacitating, leading to agonizing deaths from blood loss or shock. The war scythe represents the terrifying ingenuity of necessity, turning an agricultural tool into a devastating instrument of war. The Lucerne hammer, the breaker of bones and men. Another specialized anti-armor weapon, the Lucerne hammer was a fearsome evolution of the poleaxe, particularly popular in Switzerland. It featured a long shaft, a powerful hammerhead, and, crucially, a brutal, elongated spike at the top. But its most distinctive feature was often a series of sharp, downward-pointing flanges or prongs on the reverse side of the hammer, designed to hook and tear. The hammerhead delivered concussive force, crushing bone and deforming armor. The top spike was for piercing gaps or delivering precise fatal thrusts. But those flanges, those were for tearing. Imagine striking an armored opponent, the hammer delivering its devastating impact. And then, as you pull back, the flanges catch and rip, tearing flesh, muscle, and even dislodging pieces of plate. This wasn't just about impact, it was about tearing, twisting, and mangling. You wouldn't survive a round against a Lucerne hammer because it was designed to utterly dismantle its target, piece by agonizing piece. Every blow was meant to not only incapacitate, but to inflict gruesome, debilitating injuries. The power to smash combined with the ability to rip made it a truly terrifying weapon, turning a fully armored knight into a broken mess of mangled steel and flesh. It was a tool of absolute brutal efficiency, leaving little hope for recovery. The longbow, the silent killer raining death. While not a melee weapon, to truly understand medieval combat, you must acknowledge the supremacy of the longbow. This was not merely a hunting bow. It was a formidable war instrument, requiring immense strength and years of dedicated training to master. Capable of launching heavy bodkin-tipped arrows with incredible force and surprising accuracy over vast distances, the English longbow forever changed the face of warfare. Imagine a cloud of arrows, hundreds, even thousands strong, descending from the sky like a deadly hail. Each arrow, capable of piercing chainmail and even thinner plate at close ranges, could rip through flesh, shatter bone, and incapacitate a man in an instant. The longbow's power wasn't in individual duels, but in its ability to deliver mass, concentrated death from afar, decimating enemy formations before they even reached melee range. You wouldn't survive a round against the longbow because you wouldn't survive the relentless volley. You'd be one among hundreds of targets, helpless as a storm of death rained down upon you. It was a weapon that democratized killing, allowing skilled commoners to fell even the most heavily armored knights with terrifying efficiency. The longbow wasn't just a weapon, it was a force multiplier, an instrument of mass destruction that brought about the agonizing downfall of entire armies through sheer, relentless attrition. Its silent, distant lethality made it one of the most terrifying threats on any medieval battlefield. The Morning Star, a brutal, unforgiving impact, simple, crude, and utterly devastating. The Morning Star. This was typically a wooden or metal shaft topped with a heavy spiked ball, sometimes even with additional chains. Its design prioritized one thing: brutal, concussive impact combined with tearing, piercing spikes. Imagine being struck by a weapon that delivers the force of a hammer blow while simultaneously impaling and tearing your flesh. The Morning Star bypassed the need for sharp edges or precise cuts. It delivered blunt force trauma that could shatter bones and crush organs, while its spikes ripped through skin, muscle, and even lighter armors. Its weight and the distribution of that weight meant that even glancing blows could be crippling, leaving grievous, messy wounds. You wouldn't survive a round against a morning star because its very nature was designed for maximum, messy destruction. It was a weapon of raw, unrefined power, wielded for quick, brutal incapacitation. Against a morning star, your armor might offer some protection against the spikes, but the crushing impact would still translate into broken ribs, ruptured organs, and internal hemorrhaging. It was a weapon designed to end fights quickly and savagely, leaving its victim a mangled wreck. These weapons, whether wielded by a single terrifying warrior or launched by a colossal siege engine, were not symbols of chivalry. They were instruments of agonizing death, forged in an age of brutal conflict. You wouldn't survive a round against them, not because you lack courage, but because they were designed for one purpose: to utterly destroy. And that, in the grim reality of the medieval world, was the true measure of their terrifying power.